I have something that I want to talk about today. It's something that I have just honestly pushed to the wayside because I put a lot of pressure on myself to make it a super edited video where I referenced all these different people to prove a point. I'm not going to do that. I have to speak from the heart. I'm going to tell you what spurred me to make this video. I'm on Instagram. I'm just scrolling as we all do, looking at our favorite lifters, some of our internet buddies. Marcellus Williams, aka the Swole Fester. You can follow him on Instagram. I really respect him. I really like his training. He and I are what I would consider lifters that fall into this category: the jacked, strong, lean, and natural. A lot of it is genetic. Some of it comes down, most of it comes down to the type of training that we do and the things that we prioritize. Marcellus prioritizes accessory work, and he is a power lifter. He does heavy weighted dips, he does heavy weighted pull-ups, he does cable curls, he does what he calls craftsmanship. I call it getting jacked and stacked, you call it getting jacked and stacked, he calls it craftsmanship. He says, oh, he looks at someone that's jacked, he says, oh, that craft is looking real good on you. You're really crafting up right now. What I'm getting to, all jokes aside, is that he prioritizes performance on these movements. Not just doing them with, oh, my slow tempo, oh, I'm accumulating volume, oh, I'm doing all these hypertrophy minded things. Yeah, I'm doing that. But I'm also adding load on the bar and making that priority as well. Strength training and hypertrophy training are causally linked to one another. You cannot separate the two. You can't. You can, differentiate into different emphases. You can skew the ratios, but you cannot separate the two. Now, what does that look like for me specifically? Guys, I've been bulking for the past 8 months with a hypertrophy focus in mind because I recognize that you need to get bigger muscles and prioritize that to then later be able to prioritize strength. That's not just like, oh, my strength block, oh, my hypertrophy block. No, that's you put in months of getting bigger to then be able to put in an equivalent time that is productive to get stronger. The only difference between the two things, training for strength and training for hypertrophy, and this is the bald Omni-Man bodybuilding style, is that in training for strength, your primary goal is to add load as quickly as possible with a sustainable form. That means using things like leg drive. That means using things like, a pause where you don't necessarily use the most controlled eccentric with the best t-shirt pause at the bottom. No, you're lifting with the form that allows you to lift the most weight. It's sustainable, meaning you can repeat it week to week, but you're not doing things with, I'm gonna really feel this eccentric so that I can get the most hypertrophy. I wanna lift the most amount of weight possible. With hypertrophy training, you're emphasizing things that we'll talk about in a little bit, like rep quality, that eccentric and that nice quality pause, or going ass to grass on squats, or using a nice eccentric on your hip hinges. You're prioritizing volume accumulation, doing more reps, more sets. And then sometimes you're just milking a weight or a rep range for weeks until you need to accumulate more volume, accumulate better rep quality, or just add load to the bar. That is the only difference. In training for strength and hypertrophy, I do the exact same main exercises, close grip Larson press, close grip Larson press. The only difference is in the capacity in which they were done. We're also going to talk about low reps versus high reps. It's a meme, honestly, guys. I'm tired of people asking me this question. You could use either for both, and we're going to talk about that as well. But first, to address goals with hypertrophy training versus the goals of strength training. Guys, it's simple. One is to get jacked, one is to get strong. However, as I said, they're causally linked, so you must have an element in strength training and your hypertrophy training to be maximally successful. Much the same, you must have an element of hypertrophy, being jacked, to be able to express your muscular strength as well. So let's talk about the first one. For me, I used close grip Larson press as my main upper body hypertrophy exercise. It was the main barbell lift that I used and supplemented everything else to be able to build up that lift, to be able to build up my upper body. That doesn't sound too different, guys, from a strength training program. The only difference is My goal with a Larson press and a strength training program would to be add load on the bar as quickly as possible, as sustainably as possible. There's no difference between the two in that regard. The only difference was, in terms of hypertrophy training, my goals were to add reps, to add volume, to increase rep quality, and if those three things were met, then I would increase load. So what that would look like is sometimes even lifting the same weight for the same number of reps week to week, just improving the rep quality a little bit, or doing the same rep quality and just milking the stimulus that you can get from a given weight, guys. Just because you lift a weight once does not mean that you can't further get stimulus from that same weight. Not a lot of people talk about that, but you can say, for example, if you can squat 315 pounds for a set of 5, if you squat 315 pounds for a set of 5 next week again, even if it's the exact same cadence, exact same everything, you're gonna get a stimulus from that again. Eventually it's gonna dry up and you're gonna have to do things like add reps, add sets, add load, etc. But you can get a hypertrophy stimulus or even a strength stimulus from a same weight week to week. Now, let's talk about how hypertrophy training comes into play with strength training, and then we'll start to address what is, in my opinion, some of the caveman 5-head counter arguments that kind of say that the two have nothing to do with one another. Hypertrophy and strength training. It's self-evident to me that you must have big muscles to lift a big weight, comparing you to you. So, for example, if you want to deadlift 800 pounds, comparing you to you, you're gonna have to have bigger muscles than when you deadlifted 300 pounds. Does that mean that someone who deadlifts 600 couldn't necessarily look less jacked than someone that deadlifts 500? Yeah, it just depends on their leverages, their genetics, and so on. But comparing you to you, you're gonna have to get jacked. Now, what does that look like in a strength training program? It means you do just enough work to ensure that you are getting the adequate strength stimulus that you need. So you're doing your top set and you're doing your back downs with the specific exercise. Specificity is everything with strength, and you want to make sure that you're checking that box. But after you do that, that's a very ultimately small portion of your training in terms of exercises. It's a big portion, it's a big bite in terms of like fatigue and things that you have to prioritize. But you have a whole other laundry list of exercises that you're gonna do and gonna have to do that after your main exercises to ensure that you can continue to get stronger. Once you hit that main exercise, you hit your main variation of that main exercise, and then after that, the world is yours. Hypertrophy training. What have I been doing recently? Pre-fatiguing. Guys, you can still do bodybuilding work in a strength training program. Just the same as you're still going to take elements of strength training and include that in your hypertrophy training program. The two are causally linked to one another. The ratios are just going to change. You cannot be dogmatic with this stuff, guys. Well, you can be, but you're not going to get the results you're looking for, more than likely. We're training for health, but you're also training to get some measure of strength, and you're training to get jacked, honestly. No one is just training for health. If you were just training for health, stop lifting weights, go for a freaking walk every day, do some yoga if you don't want to, do anything exemplary. But for those that are training, we're not just hobbyists. We do this for more than just the health benefits. We're doing it to get jacked and stacked. Now, some of the counter arguments. And some of this is, just people not knowing better. So what I would always tell people is, look, man, I can't tell you what I don't know. Much the same, you don't know what you don't know. That better makes sense. Some people, a lot of people, have this idea in their mind that low reps can only be used for strength, and high intensity, as in, a big percentage your 1 rep max, can only be used for strength. That is not true. In an instance where you want to build work capacity, where you want to accumulate volume, but you don't want to beat your joints up with really, really high reps. Something that Josh Bryant does. And if you don't know who that is, go on Instagram, search Jailhouse Strong. Josh Bryant is one of the greatest powerlifting coaches of all time. He coaches people for general strength. All of the people he works with are enormous. If you know who Julius Maddox is, you should know who his coach is. If you know who Shane Hunt is, you should know who his coach is. He's the man with the plan. Now, something that he prescribes to his guys, and early in their off seasons, where you're, as a power lifter even, trying to build work capacity, trying to build muscle. High sets, low reps, low rest on an exercise that lends itself well to that setup. So what does that look like specifically? What have I done? What have I prescribed from learning that from Josh Bryant? Tricep rope pushdowns in that same parameter. You do 3 reps or 4 reps, you rest a few seconds, you do 4 more. You rest a few seconds, you do 4 more. And you might do up to 15 sets. Now, as opposed to doing like 5 sets of 12 or whatever that would be, or 3 sets of 20, which, you know, works definitely. But for some people, that amount of fatigue built up all at once in the midst of one set is not going to be something that's good for their joints or their connective tissue. Like I said, tools in the toolbox. You don't have to do it that way, but here's some of the benefits. 1, it's fun. 2, you get a juicy pump really quickly because you're resting far less. You get in more work in less time. And it also builds up your work capacity because you're always moving. That's an example of how you use low reps for hypertrophy and low reps to build work capacity. Now, high intensity, there's going to be some Jimmy Green Bean, Pinky in the Brain, 500 IQ armchair lifter that's like, there's no way you can use 80% or like 85% for hypertrophy. Get out of here. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, here's the thing. Typically, yes, I would agree with you, but that is lifter dependent and that is exercise dependent. Now, 1, if you're just generally someone that responds better to higher intensity, you're going to grow from higher intensity work, probably even better than low intensity work, depending on the individual. But I'm not even talking about that. Exercise dependency. Sumo deadlift, for example, has a much lower range of motion than conventional deadlift, deficit deadlifts, obviously, because it's from a deficit, and from stiff-legged deadlifts. Floor press as well typically will have a lower range of motion than your regular bench press. As you start to take out range of motion, like you're removing a foot or more of range of motion, you can do more reps with a higher intensity of, you know, relative to your 1 rep max. So whereas 85% might be a 5 rep max for, you know, conventional deadlifts or regular bench press, you might be able to do 8, 9, 10 reps on a sumo deadlift or a floor press at 85% of whatever your 1 rep max would be. What does that mean? More reps at a higher intensity. That's more hypertrophy. It's more fatiguing on your joints and on your muscles and on your central nervous system, but it's doing 2 things actually. 1, you're getting in more reps at a higher intensity, so you're getting stronger quicker. For you sumo deadlift boys, you know, lank lords, that's a little tidbit for you. You may find that you're able to do more reps at a higher intensity, so you should do that. Much the same, if you struggle with, you know, tricep strength on bench press, you might want to try that out for floor press as well. It's not only getting you stronger, but it's also allowing you to accumulate more volume at a higher intensity. The more weight you can use in ensuring that you're keeping the same rep quality, the better. The more hypertrophy and muscle damage you're eventually going to get. So guys, don't think dogmatically with this stuff. Think ratios. What could I take from either or both principles and apply them into one cohesive training program? That is how I see so much success with training people. Now, I absolutely have things that I just believe to be true. Like, you know, I think, for example, that stiff leg deadlifts are the best deadlift accessory. I think that Larson press is the best bench press accessory. And I think that front squats are really good for squats. Other coaches that I respect might not think that. They might think, oh, well, pause deadlifts are better, and long pause, tempo pause, bench press is better, and I like the safety bar because, but at the end of the day, in terms of being able to see what tool works best for the individual, that's where I find a lot of success with not only my training, but also people that I work with. This is going to be a double feature, right? So I'm going to post this part today. This has been the You Cannot Separate Strength from Hypertrophy talk. Tomorrow, I'll post the next part tomorrow. We're going to talk about some weighted calisthenics and just how you can simplify that in your training program in terms of okay, how do I do this? How do I progress this? I've been stuck, and so on. Like I said, it's self-evident to me, but for people that really enjoy weighted calisthenics, what I've found is that they don't employ a lot of the things that you do with barbell training when you should, because it's just another exercise. Let me know if y'all have any questions. If you don't agree with anything that I said in this video, that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Just be civil with one another in the comments. Like, if someone agrees with me and you don't attack one another, that's not what we do. You can civilly discuss. So in conclusion, you must get jacked to get stacked, and you must get stacked to get jacked. You can't separate the two.